Ladies and gentlemen, today we got some massive Call of Duty news, and specifically massive story Call of Duty news, and that is the fact that Paramount is in talks to buy the rights to create a Call of Duty movie. Now, I'm curious, if Call of Duty was to create a movie, which storyline do you think they should do? Should they do the Modern Warfare side of things? Should they do the Black Ops side of things? Should it just be called Call of Duty? Let me know what you think down in the comments. But if we go back in time, maybe the closest game we ever got to a movie has to be Call of Duty Advanced Warfare. And the reason why I say that is it's probably the biggest actor ever to be in a Call of Duty game. And what I mean by that is, yeah, Gary Oldman was great as Reznov, but we had Kevin Spacey as Johnathan Irons. Now, behind this character, there was a lot of drama.
Mr. Irons, the protocols for mounting an assault...
This man is responsible for 50,000 deaths, General. We are going in.
An operation on foreign sovereign soil, it would be an act of war without congressional approval.
Atlas is an internationally registered private company. We don't need Congress. Gentlemen, are we operational?
We're at the ready, sir. You're the trigger.
I want your team on the ground in 6 hours.
On whose authority?
On my authority!
There was a bunch of controversy.
This morning, Kevin Spacey appeared in a London courtroom. The Oscar-winning actor is standing trial for charges related to sexual offenses.
And there's actually a pretty interesting reason why we never got an Advanced Warfare 2. And it's documented in a couple of different interviews, and that is what we're going to be going over today. That backstory behind Kevin Spacey within Advanced Warfare and why we never got Advanced Warfare 2. So to understand this, we first have to look at the story of Advanced Warfare. I'm going to explain this super quickly. Essentially, within Advanced Warfare, there is a corporation known as the Atlas Corporation, the founder of which goes by the name of Johnathan Irons. At the very beginning of the game, the meme itself, press F to pay respects, comes from Johnathan Irons' son, Will Irons, being killed alongside the main character of the game. Now, that main character by the name of Jack Mitchell is played by someone by the name of Troy Baker, who, just completely as a side note, is probably my favorite voice actor in video games of all time. I think he's absolutely incredible. So a star-studded voice cast all together in one. Now, in this story, Jack Mitchell is brought in to kind of join the PMC corporation known as Atlas Corporation. As it turns out, Johnathan Irons has some other plans for all of the technology, all of the robots that he has created. And once he joins the United Nations, this is what he has to say.
Unfortunately, my appearance today has been clouded by a flurry of speculation that my company is developing a weapon of mass destruction which would be capable of targeting specific ethnic groups. I want to address these allegations head on. Are we developing such a weapon? No, we are not. Because we've already developed it. But with all due respect, the United Nations is a relic from a different time when nations were unique in their ability to solve the world's problems. But that just isn't the case anymore. Primarily because you have outsourced the job to me. I have sent people to die in your wars. So I feel uniquely qualified to tell you, your wars don't work. Which is why my priorities have changed from profits to policy. Because politicians don't know how to solve problems, but I do. So let's be clear. I am here to solve the world's problems. And I believe the world's problems begin with you.
Now, I think just a scene like this is a perfect example of why Kevin Spacey is such a good actor. Just how realistic and authentic that actually is. It sounded like Kevin Spacey actually wanted to eliminate people by their ethnicity. That's actually what he made it sound like. But as it turns out, even though he had a fantastic performance, he may not have actually been enjoying the work that he was doing to begin with. You see, Glenn Schofield, the director at Sledgehammer Games at the time, was actually interviewed and asked what Kevin Spacey was actually like on set. And he said this: when he was on set and we said action, he was unbelievable. He just is a great actor, right? Then when we said cut, you could tell the video games weren't his thing. We had to get him a trailer, so he had a trailer outside that he would go in, and he was a little bit more difficult, I would say. But boy, when you said action, there was a speech where he talks about democracy, and that's just a really, really amazing speech. This is what he was talking about.
Democracy? Democracy. Democracy isn't what these people need. Hell, it's not even what they want. America's been running around the globe trying to install democracies in nation after nation for a century, and it hasn't worked one time. Now, why do you think that is? Because these countries don't have the most basic building blocks necessary to support a democracy. Little things like we ought to be tolerant of those who disagree with us, or we ought to be tolerant of those who worship a different god than us, or that a journalist ought to be able to disagree with a fucking president. And you think you can walk into this country based on fundamentalist religious principles, drop a couple of bombs, topple a dictator, and start a democracy? Give me a break. People don't want freedom. They want rules, boundaries, protections from invaders and from themselves. People need a leader who can both provide the constraints and the support to keep chaos at bay. And you give them that, and they'll follow. And that's where I come in.
So they had an amazing main voice actor who is voiced by Troy Baker. Then they had an amazing villain by Kevin Spacey. It was perfectly set up for a series to continue on and have an Advanced Warfare 2. However, it might be a good thing that they didn't. You see, Advanced Warfare was released in the year 2014. 3 years later would have been the year that the next game was released, specifically in October of 2017, if they were doing an Advanced Warfare 2. Well, this is what came out in October of 2017.
US media reports say 8 current and former employees of the hit Netflix show are accusing Kevin Spacey of creating a toxic environment because of repeated sexual harassment.
Glenn Schofield was asked about this in the interview, and this was his response. It's a little weird. There were moments of awkwardness, though. He got a little weird once in a while on set. He would say things that just weren't proper. We all had to fake a laugh. There was some stuff. Now, I don't exactly know what that means, but it sounds a little bit sketchy nonetheless. Now, you may be wondering what happened with the decision whether or not to go forward with Advanced Warfare 2. Well, let's start by looking at what happened at the ending of Advanced Warfare 1. So essentially what happens at the end is our main characters are hunting down Johnathan Irons after his speech and essentially after he turns on the world. However, they are using Atlas Corporation exosuits, which means Johnathan Irons has control over them. So he basically stops them from working and has them captured. Now, at the very end of the game, what ends up happening is Johnathan Irons runs off into the distance, but Jack Mitchell is able to escape from his exosuit, and without the help of his exosuit, ends up chasing down Johnathan Irons. And by the very end of the game, this is what ends up happening.
Mitchell, pull me up. I'm not letting go, so you got to pull me up. There's only two choices. You either pull me up, or this whole building goes down and we go down with it. Mitchell! What are you doing? What are you doing? Mitchell! I gave you that arm! Mitchell! I gave you a second chance! Mitchell!
So Johnathan Irons is killed or falls to his death at the end of the game, and basically all of the problems in the game are now solved. The leader of Atlas Corporation has been taken out and no longer can push forward this narrative that he was trying to complete. But what if I told you that wasn't the original ending of Advanced Warfare? And in fact, originally it was supposed to be set up to end in not so much a cliffhanger, but to set up this whole Advanced Warfare universe. Years later, Troy Baker had an interview on a podcast with Dan Allen Gaming, and on said interview, he said this about the original ending for Advanced Warfare.
The original ending of the original ending of the game. You're frozen in your mech, and I'm sitting there, and I've got my gun like this, and of course he's controlling it, and the original thing is he walks up to you and he talks about how every movement needs a martyr. He goes, to really have an effective movement, you need to have a martyr. And so he walks and he puts his head right there and he takes the gun and he puts it right to his head. He goes, I know what I'm doing.
So essentially I can't show you that ending. I can only show you the original one, but I kind of recreated it.
He's hacking into our exos! Come on, ammo!
You rely too much on those things.
The city is falling, it's over! What I have started won't end with me. It's bigger than me, and it's certainly bigger than you!
You think I'm a monster? That's only because you don't have the conviction to do what's necessary.
I know what is necessary. This movement is bigger than me, bigger than you, bigger than one company or country. Every movement needs a martyr. I know what I am doing.
So basically the original plan that Sledgehammer actually wanted to do was in either ending to create Kevin Spacey or Johnathan Irons as a martyr, to push forward a movement that he was trying to do. And what ended up happening is Sledgehammer went forward with that, wrote the game, put it all together as Advanced Warfare 2. However, when they ended up pitching it to Activision, ultimately, they were shut down. They basically said, no, it's not going to happen. Now, whether that be because the rest of the futuristic games, or whether that be because they just thought a game in the past or a World War II game would do better, we don't unfortunately know that side of things. But what we do know is even though the game was fully written, planned out, and even Kevin Spacey was supposed to have maybe cameos of recordings, or as this martyr movement, it never ended up coming to fruition. And needless to say, it's probably the best possible thing that could have happened to them, because the game, Advanced Warfare 2, would have been coming out at the exact same time that Kevin Spacey's scandal would have been coming under scrutiny. And if it would have been greenlit, the game could have potentially been canceled, or we would have been looking at news articles a little bit more like this one.
This year's Call of Duty stars an actor with many allegations held against them.
I want to address these allegations head on.
We are reaching for the stars, but we're